Sir, it looks like we have a good group of people in already, so we are ready when you are, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I'll kick it off. Again, I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight, especially Jason for acting as our moderator. We've done a very extensive outreach to the community. We've had a lot of people, a lot of groups take time, effort to put their thoughts into this process, look at the areas that might be improved, look at some of the things that we are doing all right. And I think it's been a great discussion, really for everybody. And we're really about halfway through that. Now it's to put it in a format that we can kind of analyze it. What are the things that we can do in the short term? What are things that we can do in the long term as we go forward? And I also appreciate the assistance and support from the Finn Institute in this whole process. And with that, turn over to Chief Clifford.
Thank you, Mayor, and I will also say thank you to everybody for their participation in this. I agree that this has been a very valuable experience for us. As a police department, we have a lot of good takeaways that we will be talking about over the next couple months. And I do agree that the hardest part is over, but we're not done yet. We are done with really the first phase here. We have a couple more phases. I'll get into that more in a little bit. But again, thank you and welcome everybody. I will turn it over to our moderator, Jason Benitez, who will talk about some of the takeaways from our conversation series. Jason?
Good evening, everybody, and thanks again, Mayor and Chief. I'm going to just speak from the heart today. I didn't really plan any comments, but I'm just humbled by this process. I'm inspired. I'm hopeful. I've been amazed by the engagement by the community, from the elder members of our community way down to the amazing youth that we heard from on the most recent call. This is just my if I can encourage everyone on this call, to stay engaged in some way. This was just the beginning in many ways, and in order for us to really see these changes through to the finish line, it's going to require your continual involvement to those on this call. For input, for suggestions, and for frankly, kind of being involved in the change that we'd like to see, and holding those that need to make the changes accountable. I think that we did uncover some trends through all the calls. I think that these conversations provided an opportunity for listening that may not have been able to happen in other settings. And we hope that listening, is working in both directions, both from the police force out to the community and the community listening to the police. I also hope that, I think that these conversations, at least for me, provided a way to connect, to know what people do, to know, who even more of the leaders in our community are and what you're doing. And I hope that some of you on this call got that out of this process too, that you've been able to kind of connect and see other meet and make connections with folks on the calls. And, as I said from the beginning, one task force cannot and will not eradicate all the issues that we're facing. The quest for greater social justice will always be present in some way. And, we just have to realize how and in what ways we can kind of pick up the baton that was handed to us and continue to move that needle in some way. So I'm leaving this phase of the process inspired, amazed by how, when truly setting the context in a correct way, how the community can come together around difficult issues, even when we disagree on certain things. And I don't want to make this my closing remarks overly political or bring politics into it, but I on HBO there's this show called The Shop, and it's produced by LeBron James and some other folks, and they have different athletes and stars on the call, and it's usually a 15-minute segment before a movie plays. And the most recent segment featured former President Obama, and when he was asked kind of the similar question, like it feels like we're kind of back at square one when it comes to social justice when comparing today to what we've seen through civil rights. And he just had a beautiful answer that I felt resonated with me, and similar to the point that I was just making, saying that, like, each generation has to see where they can pick up where the former generation left off and see what they can do to kind of move the needle forward. So again, without overly politicizing this, I can drop that YouTube link in the chat room, and if anybody wants to take a look at that after this call, it's about a 20-minute clip, and the question that I was just referencing is kind of at the 11-minute mark. But for those that didn't have a chance to kind of have myself introduce myself to them on this call, my name is Jason Benitez. I'm the Vice President for Talent and Inclusion at the Capital Region Chamber. We have an office in Schenectady, off of Erie Boulevard, near the casino. I happen to work in the Colony office, and we have another in Clifton Park. But if anyone on this call, wants to reach out in any way about any of the work related to this work, or any other connections or collaborations that we can think of, I'm opening myself up to that, and can also drop my email in the chat box. But I just want to thank the mayor and the chief, and also first and foremost you community members, for being vocal, for coming, for trusting that this process is going to actually move the needle, and to kind of stay engaged. So that would be my parting comment to you all, is to stay engaged. We're going to need your engagement moving forward. And we hope that also these conversations, I think I heard on quite a few of them, the call and the need for more of these conversations on a regular basis to be happening continually, outside of just this task force process. So again, I just want to say, stay safe and stay healthy to everyone on this call. I'm going to drop my email if anybody does want to reach out. And again, thank you to everyone for all the hard work, Carissa, and keeping us, organized, and everyone else that really put in the effort. And most importantly, you all, the community members on these calls. Again, I said this at the last youth call, you all get to see interactions on a ground level day to day that many of us may not. So being the bridge and bringing that voice into these conversations and into this space has been instrumental to this process. So, I'm grateful, I'm thankful, I'm inspired, and I'm hopeful. So those are the sentiments that I'd like to kind of at least wrap this segment of the process with. So thank you, Chief, and I'm handing it back to you.
Thank you, Jason. And if I could also say thank you for taking on such a important duty as being our moderator. I want to thank President David Harris for recommending you. You were the first decision that the steering committee made, and it was an excellent choice, and we were so fortunate to have you to lead this. I do have some notes I want to speak from, but before I do so, I just want to kind of piggyback on what you said from a takeaway from these conversations. I think that we are going to be looking at maybe doing taking our community engagement to the next level, and this is these conversations have been a perfect start, because we know that we're learning so much by having more conversations, talking about what's going on in the community, making more connections within the community. I've already made some already just through these conversations. We can make changes without necessarily calling them reforms. This is where the reinvention part comes into play. Changes in the way that we manage the police department, changes to the way of our strategy on how we fight crime, how we provide public safety, and building the community as being a part of that sounds like it's something that has come out of these conversations, and something that we will look to build upon. Because community policing really is the community policing themselves and using the police to make that happen. And most importantly, the takeaway that I have is the resources that we've gained here, all of the human resources, the people that have been a part of this call, And this is a good segue into what I want to talk about as we reflect upon what we just did, our timeline and our next step. These conversation groups, there was 6 groups that we brought together: a community group, a faith-based group, a neighborhood association group, a public safety group, a business association group, and a youth and education group. So the steering committee format was chosen to comply with the governor's executive order number 203. In that order, it directs the chief executive of the local government, which in this case is the mayor, to convene the head of the local police agency, which is the police chief, and stakeholders in the community to perform a comprehensive review of current police force deployments, strategies, policies, procedures, and practices for the purposes of addressing the particular needs of the community served by such police agency. The executive order goes on to list specifics, but that's basically how we came to have a steering committee in the first place. The steering committee started small and it grew to 66 members of this community that were ultimately invited. Now, it sounds like a large number, but it's that large because it involves 15 unique organizations. And of those unique organizations, there are many of them, like the Schenectady Police, the Schenectady County Sheriffs, the Clergy Against Hate, the City Council, that have multiple members attached to that fill in that 66 number. So it's a big steering committee, but most importantly, it has 15 unique organizations that represent it. We held bi-monthly meetings, basically from mid-July. And the purpose of those meetings were to establish the logistics and the framework of the conversations that we were going to hold. So everything that came together was the result of the steering committee discussing the format and the logistics. The steering committee was also tasked with reviewing all Schenectady Police Department policies and procedures, which are available online on our website. There's a link there. And I would encourage anybody that hasn't read them or taken a look at them to please do so, because it is a part of what the executive order is all about. Steering committee members were also invited to complete a ride-along with the Schenectady Police and invited to sit and listen along with the Schenectady Unified Communications Center. That's our dispatch center provided by the county. We also shared some articles with the steering committee members and recommended that they read them. Finally, the steering committee selected a research partner, which is the Finna Institute, to guide the process and conduct a review, analysis, and summary report regarding the findings of these conversations. A little bit of statistics on the conversations that we held. A total of 183 community members were invited to participate in the conversations. The invited members were considered panelists. They were given full privileges as far as being on the call, speaking, and being able to write in the chat room. Also, anybody that wanted to participate was allowed to be an attendee, which did not have the open access to speaking, but comments were available. Attendees, we also had viewers at home watching it on Spectrum, Fios, and YouTube. But for attendees, those that logged on online, if they wanted to speak, if they wanted to be a part of the conversations, we accommodated where we needed to give them the privilege of the floor to speak. A total of 88 stakeholder groups were represented during these conversations. Each stakeholder group was allowed to nominate 2 representatives into the different 6 conversations. We later lifted that two nomination limit when we saw that the numbers that we were bringing together weren't as big as we anticipated. So we lifted that to anybody who was interested in being on the conversations were allowed to. The largest conversation we had was 114 attendees. Now, attendees are the ones that could watch and chat and type in questions. This does not include the home viewership. The largest discussion panel, which is where the participants are able to talk, was a tie. It was the Youth and Education and the Neighborhood Association panel. We had 38 members of the community on each of those calls respectively. The Youth and Education conversation had overwhelmingly the most comments in the chat room, and they were all very good comments. The largest draw, total viewers, again, outside of TV and internet, was 180 people. That was for the community conversation. 180 people between the attendee list and the panelist group. A total of 23 questions were posed to the panel in advance for our discussion. And on average, 3 to 5 questions were covered during each 2-hour conversation. Now, these 23 questions, we have allowed testimonials and those questions to be answered by anybody that would like to submit it to spdcollaborative@schenectadypd.com. We've encouraged testimonials both before the conversations and after, and that account is still active and monitored. The deadline for submitting those testimonials is December 1st of 2020, this year. So what's the next step? As the community meeting phase of this initiative comes to a close, the testimonial phase still remains open for another 3 weeks. In the meantime, we are working with the Fin Institute to put together a survey to engage our initial meeting participants, the Schenectady Police personnel, as well as the community at large. Once the survey period is complete, the Fin Institute will go to work assessing the current policies and procedures of the Schenectady Police Department and comparing them to the conversation talking points and the data that they receive from surveys and testimonials. Once the report is finalized and presented to the steering committee by the Fin Institute, meetings will be held to discuss potential reforms and reinvention. We're currently in the process of uploading to our website previously held steering committee meeting videos, agendas, and supporting documents from this process to ensure transparency and communication. So that summarizes our timeline. The couple points that I did not comment on because I don't want to really set expectations too soon is once we have our decisions made on reform and reinvention, we will be looping in the city council. They will then become a part of this process where they will review and endorse, make recommendations, and then hold a public comment period on these reforms before it goes to a council vote for ratification. So that part, we anticipate having to them no later than mid-March, correct? Mid-March? I think so. Yeah, mid-March, so that we have an I correct myself, mid-February. Mid-February, because we have to have it ratified by April 1st, so mid-February. So that's our timeline. That's all I have right now. Anybody in the room have anything they want to add? Okay. Mayor, anything else you'd like to say?
No, we're eager to get it put together, get it to the city council, and do the formal adoption of it the end of March. Or actually, hopefully we do it the mid part of March and get it in by the 1st of April.
Okay. Jason, any final thoughts? Did we lose Jason?
No, I'm here. No, again, I know that this is just the beginning steps and, I'm here to try to be a resource in any way that the chamber and myself can. And again, just encouraging everybody to stay engaged because we're going to need that collaborative community engagement through the rest of this process. So, as we go into the holidays, happy holidays to those celebrating, and stay safe and healthy, everyone.
All right, thank you, Jason. And I guess on a final note, we will continue to communicate publicly our next steps through this process when the steering committee meets and the steps that we take so that we remain transparent on this process. With that, thank you everybody for attending. We really do appreciate your time, and have a good night. Thank you.
Take care.